Recently, someone posted a very disturbing comment about Steiner Waldorf education. I reposted it on the philosophyofreedom.com website. Hey, heads up! Waldorf schools are being completely taken over by the leftist cult religion of woke. Take it from an insider. Waldorf education has now completely abandoned the teachings and principles of Steiner, or has twisted them to fit the contemporary identity politics woke agenda. Waldorf education is now a factory of leftist cult indoctrination. Oh my God, it looked like the culture war had reached Waldorf education. I sent my children through Waldorf schools and am an advocate for Rudolf Steiner's Science of Freedom, so it was very disturbing to hear that Waldorf education was under attack. How did this happen? I have been monitoring the culture war after producing 4 culture war videos for the Rudolf Steiner Philosophy of Freedom YouTube channel. I found that social justice ideology was influenced by the ideas of postmodernism, neo-Marxism, intersectionality theory, and identity politics. These far-left political ideas are attempting to replace the Enlightenment values of reason, science, individualism, and freedom emphasized in Rudolf Steiner's foundation book, The Philosophy of Freedom. This is the first video in a series that investigates the culture war that is now being fought in Waldorf schools. I started my investigation when BLM was in the news every night. The first thing I discovered on most Waldorf websites were statements declaring support for BLM. BLM is a left-wing political organization that has been organizing protest demonstrations around the country that have escalated into violence. The founders of BLM are trained Marxists who know how to organize and agitate by inflaming feelings of resentment and victimhood. Marxism views the world as a never-ending conflict between the oppressed and the oppressor. Marxism is a materialistic worldview. It believes that the way you change people is to change the external world. Waldorf education is based on a spiritualistic worldview that believes the way you change the world is to change people through proper human development. The materialistic worldview focuses on the outer conditions in the world. Rudolf Steiner explains, quote, "Take the thought of social democracy. Change the circumstances and a person will have better living and working conditions. That's a belief of materialism, short and deceiving. This belief is very paralyzing for every study of social life." When BLM marches to end systemic racism and white privilege, they steer the issue to outer circumstances and away from inner character development. The spiritualistic worldview focuses on the inner human condition. Quote, "Now how can a theosophist free himself from this materialistic belief that existence and even morality would improve if one would just improve outer conditions? Let's begin with the reflection that every change has to be made by human beings, and that therefore every condition that's brought about for the social order arises from human thoughts and feelings. Once one has this thought firmly in mind, one can free oneself from the materialistic view that everything is brought about by external conditions. Rudolf Steiner knew that the way to improve social and political life is to improve people. Steiner's Waldorf education is a unique method that focuses on character development along with academic achievement. The first Waldorf school was founded back in 1919 because after World War I, people were disillusioned with society and political leaders just as they are today. A businessman with a spiritualistic worldview, realized that what was needed to remedy the breakdown of the social system was better people and better leaders. The businessman asked Rudolf Steiner for his help to start a new kind of school that would teach children to become better people and future leaders. Steiner agreed that working with children was the best way to move towards a new social order. You can imagine the most ingenious utopian societies, but they won't work without better people and better leaders. The principles of Waldorf education work because they are based on Steiner's deep understanding of the stages of human development that address the needs of the growing child. Waldorf education has its foundation in the spiritual ideals of Rudolf Steiner's anthroposophy, which believes in humanity's inner wisdom. This is why Waldorf education's primary intention is to nurture the unique potential in each child. BLM does not believe in the spiritualistic view of humanity's inner wisdom. They believe that at the inner core of every human being is a racist that supports the oppression of people of color. BLM says the best way to move towards a new social order is anti-racist education and training to end the bias of white supremacy. I had a sinking feeling when I discovered many Waldorf schools were committed to becoming anti-racist schools. Will anti-racist education produce better people who will build a better society? Ibram Kendi is known as the prophet of anti-racism. His book, How to Be an Anti-Racist, is on many Waldorf schools' anti-racist recommended reading lists. Martin Luther King Jr.'s solution to racism was to judge people on the content of their character, not the color of their skin. Anti-racists disagree. They say the solution to past racism is more racism. Ibram Kendi states, quote, "The only remedy to racist discrimination is anti-racist discrimination. The only remedy to past discrimination is present discrimination. The only remedy to present discrimination is future discrimination." The fact about anti-racism training is that it not only can't get rid of racism, it makes you more racist. How will making people more racist bring about a better society? I have been contacted by parents who have told me that anti-racism education is not the Waldorf education that they signed up for. The fact that many Waldorf schools are implementing anti-racist action plans was a serious sign that the materialism of social justice ideology is indeed taking over Waldorf education. Social justice activists are making sweeping changes to the Waldorf school structure and curriculum. These radical changes are being imposed by social justice extremists who have set up diversity, equity, and inclusion committees made up of woke parents and teachers who are now running the schools. When the diversity committee starts deciding cultural norms, curriculum, hiring, and teacher training led by non-Waldorf educators, you no longer have a Waldorf school. Anti-racist education fails because it is based on the materialistic view of cultural determinism. Cultural determinism believes that the external culture in which we are raised determines who we are, our emotions and behavior. They claim, without evidence, that everyone has been culturally determined to be a racist because of systemic racism, and are in need of re-education. The solution, according to this kind of thinking, is to culturally determine a different result through indoctrination. It almost looks like some kind of socialist revolution is turning Waldorf schools into indoctrination camps for teachers and students. The spiritual principle of a Waldorf school is that the image of a human being as a spiritual being informs every aspect of the school. It is the mission of the school to nurture the unique spirit of each child. Steiner puts it this way in The Philosophy of Freedom, quote, "The concept of the human being is not complete unless it includes the free spirit as the purest expression of human nature. After all, we are human in the fullest sense only to the extent that we are free." The first principle of an anti-racist school is a materialistic view that the image of a human being as a racist informs every aspect of the school. To stamp out racism, the Diversity Committee in an anti-racist school will have a community watch program to encourage informants to report acts of observed racism. Anti-racism education assumes racist microaggressions are present in every human interaction, so no one is safe from being reported as a racist. Here is a short clip with an example of how you cannot avoid accusations of being a racist.
I'll give you a quick example out of cynical theories about how critical race theory in particular, but it could be any of the woke theories, sets you up to lose, to always end up in a struggle session, even if it's not forced. So we give the following example. Imagine you own something like a shop where you have to interact with the customers, you have to help them. And so as you come out from behind the counter, two customers happen to enter at the same time, say it's a black person and a white person. Your race doesn't matter in this analysis, as it turns out. And so then you have to choose who to approach first. So if you choose to approach the white person, critical race theory begins with the assumption that racism is present in this interaction, and it's the critical race theorist's job to find it and call it out, make it visible, make oppression visible is the saying. So if you approach the white person first, the analysis will be you approach the white person first because you see them as first-class citizens, and you see black people as second-class citizens, therefore you are a racist. If, however, you approach the black person first, again, the assumption is racism is present in the interaction. It is a critical race theorist's purpose to find it and call it out, make it visible. If you approach the black person first, the analysis from critical race theory will be you don't trust black people to be unattended in a store, and so you wanted to deal with that first and get the black person out, therefore your decision was racist. And so in both cases, you are caught with racism.
Another materialistic view of social justice ideology is its emphasis on group identity. They expect that the way people will think and behave is culturally constructed by their ethnic and social surroundings. When the main thing you notice about someone is their ethnicity, then you are not truly looking at that person. It is true we have characteristics that are determined by our ethnic group, but the spiritualistic view is that in the course of our development, we free ourselves from these typical characteristics to become a unique individuality. How to free ourselves from our group type is discussed in Chapter 14 of The Philosophy of Freedom, Individuality and Type. Quote, "An ethnic group is a whole, and the members belonging to it exhibit characteristic traits that are determined by the nature of the group. How the single member is constituted and his general behavior will be characteristic of the ethnic group to which he belongs. However, the human being frees himself from these typical characteristics. He develops his own traits and roles for reasons that can only be found in himself. What is typical in him serves only as a means to develop his own individual nature. People who are free from typical characteristics and groupthink will build a better, more inclusive society because they will be less tribal and less divisive." BLM's threat that there will be no peace until there is justice is not the path to a better society. When your plan for a just society is the reverse discrimination of anti-racism, it creates insecurity for those who will be discriminated against. To have peace, everyone needs to feel secure in their freedom to pursue their own goals and happiness, and to be fairly rewarded for merit. This is why Rudolf Steiner says the way to a peaceful society is freedom, not justice. Quote, "Freedom is the only word which has a ring of immediate truth today. If, instead of such slogans as peace founded on justice or peace imposed by force, people would only speak of peace based on freedom, then this word would echo round the world and kindle in the hearts of all a sense of security." Waldorf education is the way to peace because of its emphasis on freedom and dignity for everyone. It has a proven record of developing the creative and critical thinkers needed to build a better society by nurturing the free spirit in each student. You can't expect to change the fundamental structure, values, and principles of a Waldorf school and still have Waldorf education. Waldorf worked for my children, so I believe Waldorf education is worth fighting for. Be sure and subscribe so you don't miss upcoming videos about the culture war in Waldorf schools.